If you want to be in good health, you have to spend 10 minutes of your life every single day in taking care of whom? Yourself. You want to be worth 100 crores, right? Yes or no? Are bolo monati. Yes or no? Huh? At least. At least. Okay? So, the next thing is, you will understand one more thing, and that is, once you make this wealth, right? See, the pyramid of wealth. Wealth is the biggest pillar of hell. Write it down. Because with wealth will come what? Power. With power will come ego. And if that comes, you're finished. I was finished too. So the first thing I did, when I made my first million, I pay millions in taxes, okay? So I'm just being upfront, okay? Over the period of years, in my last 50 years, I've worked for the government in a way, I've paid $20 million in income tax. Okay? It's the truth. Why? Because your first act should be to the country where you live. Otherwise, power will get you. So I made some mistakes. First thing I did was I bought a Rolls Royce. It's in public. Garib manas hato, heni hoshiyari mara. And that was the worst thing I ever made. My father-in-law would have died. I'm being honest with you. The ego got to me. So there was a little old woman. I went, shopping, and she hit my car. I went to the dealership. He says it's $6,000 to repair it because, sir, you got a Rolls Royce. It has to be of the same color. So I was very upset with her, and I'm sorry. I was rude to the woman. I regret it today. Because what comes with wealth? Power. Power leads to what? Ego. I was stupid. Okay? This is telling the truth. I told my father-in-law, come rain or sunshine, you have to go tomorrow, because then the next problem was, no one in my family would touch the car. So the car was not used. Then I go to the dealership for 3 months, and he charges me $12,000 to repair it. I said, why? He says, sir, Rolls Royce is a handmade car. It's all has to be run. I had no time to run it. Kutra ne bathroom gao na, that was my Rolls Royce. Excuse me. The father-in-law, I said, you take him. So he went to pick up my elder son. He would have died. He was on 68, and thank God he didn't turn left, he turned right, and he had a big accident. Because it was a Rolls Royce, he was saved. That day I said, Bhagwan, my wealth will all go to charity, because I don't want to get killed. Okay? So I'm telling you my problems of life also, because you'll understand that this is normal. If you do not have a goal. What was my goal? My goal was to make $1 million. Honest to God. Once you get that goal, you let it go to your head. You're finished. You'll destroy yourself. And there are lots of people in the world that can meet the $1 million, right? $2,000. I'll give you an equation. $2,000 if you invest it right at the age of 21 and you compound it, you will be worth $3.2 million. I'm talking dollar-wise. Okay? Because you have a smaller goal. Don't touch the interest. There is what's called multiplication of wealth. Every 10 years, money will double. Simple interest. Hey, na banker. Simple vastu. તમે આજે 20 વર્ષથી જો શરૂ કરો 60 વર્ષે રિટાયર થયો હું 71 છું નથી રિટાયર થયો 40 વર્ષ થઈ ગયા ને મલ્ટિપ્લિકેશન જો and for 40 years look at it n plus 1 divided by 2 you understand $2,000 every 10 years doubles so 2,000 in the first 10 years will be 4,000 in the next 10 years it will be 8,000 in the next year it will be 16 you got 4 cycles 16 will be 32 simple 32 multiplied by कोई पास कैलकुलेटर तो जो 32 multiplied by 40 कितना था मिलियन थी ऊपर थे क्या कि नहीं you understand what I'm saying you understand the concept is very simple concept is that you have to have a path and the path is मारे 100 करोड़ बनवांच I don't want to take away the fun my son's going to tell you how you're going to make the 100 crores because he'll tell you multiplication of wealth right so once you have a path right you got a 100 crore deal and you are say in your 40s let's assume you're in the 40s right And you want to retire at the age of 65, 70. You retire too early, you make your wife go crazy. Don't retire. That's my philosophy. Because you will really destroy your family. So, what you have to understand is wealth will come. All this, what I'm telling you, it's already the tail end of a thing. Read it. I don't want to go through it because, it's not fair for me to take your time. Valuable time, right? And so basically, you want to become a multi-millionaire. 100 crore જોઈએ છે, right? 10 વર્ષે double થાય છે. I mean, let's go backwards. 50 ના 100 થાય છે, right? 25 ના 50 થાય છે. 25 ના 12.5, 40 ગણો ને, 6.5 જોઈએ. લેવરેજ, શું કર્યું? મેં કીધું લેવરેજ વાપરવાની. તમે સાહેબ આજે મારા બધા સર્વન્ટ્સને મેં ઘરો અપાવી દીધા છે. I'm telling you. And Kip has helped me get a cook there. He's brilliant. He's a multimillionaire today. He came from Maharashtra, but the guy was tight. So first thing I made him do, I gave him a loan for $400,000. I built my house for $86,000. Okay? That's a fact of life. I gave him a loan of $400,000 with zero down. You don't need money. You need what? Integrity. Samjha? The guy would pay. Bank says, what will you do? I said, he's my employee. I'll take it out of a paycheck. He says, fine, we'll give you a loan. He bought the house for $400,000. I got him a loan at 3.25%, right? And I refinanced it at 1.75% a year. That house is worth $800,000. 400,000 in equity થઈ ગઈ, right? Huh? तो 400,000 in equity, साहब 85 multiply करना 3.5 करोड़ થઈ ગયા કે નહીં? કરોડપતિ થઈ ગયો? He's not stopped there. He's like my son. I've trained him. He's got 3 more houses in India now. The guy lives like a king. Because if you stop leveraging, if you stop this leveraging technique, you'll never be at the end. He'll make more money than his kids. Okay? So basically what I'm asking you to do, and I've got people here that will give you a synopsis of how you can multiply wealth. So I don't want to take the fun away from you. My next speaker is Jen, Kip Steinberg. Give him a hearty welcome. I'm in America because of him. Well, Kip. Thank you, sir.
Happy to be here to meet you tonight. I don't know how familiar people are here with the U.S. immigration system. I'm sure many of you have had some experiences, perhaps good, perhaps bad, applying for visas at the U.S. consulates here in India. Some of what I'm going to say may be elementary to you, and others it may be brand new. And I'm going to try to be brief, which is difficult to do with a complicated subject like immigration. One thing I have already learned tonight is that I've known Mr. Shah for about 40 years, and he's a very tough act to follow. But let me start with this. The world of immigration in the United States is divided in two. The law that Congress wrote, the Immigration and Nationality Act, presumes that when you apply for a visa, that you are an intending immigrant. That's very important because it establishes the burden of proof on you to prove that you are a non-immigrant if you're coming to visit the United States, whether as a tourist, a business visitor, a student, or any non-immigrant category. The law places the burden on you to show that you're not an intending immigrant, you're not intending to live in the United States permanently, but that you are a non-immigrant. So how do you do that? Well, the U.S. consul has to determine whether you have enough family ties and economic ties to India to convince that person that you're going to return back here to your home country. And a mere letter is not going to carry the day. A letter from someone in the U.S. saying that they've known you for a long time and you're a good person, that's not going to prove, that's not going to carry your burden of proof. what's going to carry your burden of proof is documentation. And I have written a somewhat detailed list of the kind of documents. It's in your blue folders. You may want to refer to it because I'm not going to read it to you, but there's a detailed list of the kinds of documents you need to present to the U.S. consul to determine that you have family ties and economic ties that you're not going to abandon when you come visit the United States. The most important thing for you to remember, if you forget everything I say here tonight, is the word temporary. You can't repeat that word enough to a U.S. consul or to an immigration officer when you land at a U.S. port of entry. They need to hear that you're coming to the United States on a temporary basis and that you intend to return home, and you're not intending to come to the United States on a permanent basis. So every few words, whenever you're interviewed, make sure you mention that word temporary. You need to establish that you have a residence in the foreign country. If you own your own house, you need to bring your deed to prove that. If you have an apartment and you rent something, you rent your home, you need to have a lease to show that. If you have children here or you have a spouse here, you want to bring your marriage certificate and your birth certificates. If you have a business here, you want to prove evidence of your business with both photographs, tax returns, bank statements. If you have a job here, you want a letter from your employer, your pay stubs. Well, it's documentation that's going to convince the consul, not simply a 1 or 2 page letter, which is often the case as to what people think is sufficient. In terms of business visitors to the United States, you need to understand that business visitors are not allowed to work in the United States. They can come here to negotiate contracts, to have business meetings, to oversee the running of a business, but not run the business themselves. So it's a difference between labor and labor meaning actual doing work as opposed to just conducting normal business activities. You can't receive a salary if you're a business visitor. You can have your expenses paid by your employer. Preferably the expenses would be paid in India, not here. One last thing I'll say about business visitors. A lot of people are under the misimpression that if you are applying for an H-1B visa or an L-1 visa, multinational company transferee, or an H-1B visa, professional visa, or an EB-5 visa, which is based on investment and leads to permanent residence, those categories preclude you from coming to visit as a B-1 visa. That's a business. B-1 means business visitor, B-2 means tourist. And that's not actually the case. You can get a B-1 visa to oversee an investment that, while your EB-5 is pending. You can come to meet with a potential employer or have meetings with someone who intends to file an L-1 petition for you with a B-1 visa. You just can't engage in the work here. So if a consul officer is questioning you and learns that you intend to work here in the future or that you intend to immigrate eventually under the EB-5 program, what's important is your intent on this particular trip. You can be a non-immigrant on this particular trip. It would help if you have a return plane ticket, of course, and have a long-term goal of immigrating to the United States. But you need to articulate that. I have a section in this handout also on parole for entrepreneurs. I'm not going to talk about that too much. It's highly technical. It's all set out in this handout in great deal of detail, but I'm under time constraints here, and it's not as relevant as it once was. It used to be a very viable option for some people if they didn't get an H-1B visa because there's only a limited number of those visas that are chosen by lottery. And then we would explore parole, which is a temporary admission for people who qualify as entrepreneurs. But Trump has indicated that he either wants to eliminate that program or modify it. So when I wrote this, it was before the election was decided, and I don't know what the viability of that program is going to be going forth. If you think you're interested in that, you should consult with an attorney. The last subject I want to talk about, which is the H-1B visas, and I'll say that, you know, there's a joke, a long-standing joke with immigration attorneys, which is that the U.S. State Department and the Immigration Service, they have platforms that you have to use when you're applying for benefits. And they're notoriously difficult. They have all kinds of glitches and problems. And we always joke amongst ourselves that we need some H-1B engineers from India to fix those problems, because the H-1B engineers from India are really the best in the world. Unfortunately, our government won't employ them because they're not U.S. citizens yet. But on January 17th, we'd already been here for 10 days in this country, the Immigration Service published new rules for H-1B visas. And I'm mentioning H-1B visas because it's really a very popular visa for educated professionals from India to come to the United States. And these were called the H-1B modernization rules. I'll just touch on a few of them that have changed the roadmap for H-1B visas in ways that seem somewhat promising, but again, Trump is really the most anti-immigrant president our country has ever had. And so it's not what's more important than what's written down is how these things are implemented and interpreted by the government. And that remains to be seen, because it's a whole new world, because these new regulations just took effect on January 17th and we have a new administration. But the main takeaways for the new rules for H-1B visas, first of all, there's a new form. The I-129B form is completely revised, in case some of you may have had H-1B visas. And the new form takes into account these new rules. There's two main things to know about the new rules. I mean, there's many, many things in these new rules. The new rule is like 100 pages long. But I'm going to distill it down to two basic things. First of all, the definition of what's called a specialty occupation, which used to be basically defined as a field for which a professional degree is required. But now they're not going to look so much at the degree. They're going to look at your actual course of study, regardless of what your degree is, and see if that course of study qualifies you to do the specialty work in your occupation. So merely having a bachelor's of commerce, for example, which is very general, may not qualify you depending on the courses you took. So they're going to look very closely at the courses you take to see if those courses are the type of courses that are directly and logically connected to the position that you're going to do. The other major change is that the definition of a U.S. employer has changed. Previously, you had to show that you had that you were an employee working for an employer. The employer had the right to hire and fire you, supervise you. The ability to pay was a big question. That's no longer the case. Now, what they're simply going to look at is whether you have a bona fide job offer. And why is that a big deal? That's a big, big deal because it opens up the door for people to petition for themselves. That's never been the case before. You've always had to have an employer petitioning for you. But now, theoretically, under these new rules, as long as you have a bona fide job offer, it could be in your own company and you can petition for yourself. Of course, we're going to have to see how these new rules play out and how they are implemented. But that is a sea change in how the potential for more people to qualify for H-1B visas. I'm going to stop there. I know that's a very superficial overview. If some of you have questions, you can come up to me afterwards. Yes?
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
With these recent changes, you still go through the lottery system.
Yeah, the lottery is still there. There's a limited number of visas every year, yes.
I just was asking because you just said we could petition it, from our own side, right? So then how would that kind of work?
Well, foreigners are allowed to have companies in the United States. But before, the rules were such that they didn't consider it a bona fide job offer if you were employing yourself, because you were self-interested. They're getting rid of that notion. And now, for those people who might have a startup company, for example, that company, even though it's owned by you, can now petition for you. So that will help a certain percentage of people that didn't have that opportunity before. Anyway, my business card is out on the table out there, and if you have any other questions, I'm going to be around after all the speakers. Thank you very much.